So imagine you're in a massive, bustling North American city, like hundreds of thousands of residents, a huge local economy, major transit lines, all of that.
Right, a fully functioning metropolis.
Exactly. But now imagine that this same city literally cannot host a wedding reception for, say, 300 people without sending everyone out of town.
It just sounds completely impossible.
It sounds like a glitch in a simulation, right?
Yeah.
But up until, well, right now, that was the actual reality for Canada's fifth largest city.
Yeah, and it really highlights this bizarre phenomenon in urban planning. You get a city that grows so fast, it essentially forgets to build itself a living room.
A living room. I like
Yeah,
that.
you have all these people, all this commerce, but just no center of gravity at all.
Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at a massive urban metamorphosis happening in Longueuil, Quebec.
And for a little geographical context for you, Longueuil sits right across the St. Lawrence River from Montreal.
Right. And we are breaking down this highly ambitious project today called Espace Longueuil. We're pulling from some really detailed project breakdowns for this, specifically from wikiresidence.ca and infodrone.ca.
Because this isn't just about, constructing a couple of shiny new buildings. Far from it.
No, it's a radical attempt to retroactively install a high-density heart into a city that previously just didn't have one.
Exactly.
And our mission today is to figure out how they are actually pulling this off. We want to unpack how a major city goes from having this glaring infrastructure void to suddenly greenlighting a massive, privately funded, community-centric urban hub.
And more importantly, we need to look at the underlying blueprint here. Because if this works, it could completely change the way cities approach major infrastructure projects going forward.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the sheer scale of the deficit they're trying to fix here, because you don't just authorize a project this massive unless the pain point is severe.
Oh, the pain point was a massive economic and cultural leak. If you look at Longueuil historically, it functioned heavily as a commuter hub.
Right, people just slept there and left.
Basically, yeah. People lived there, but for major events, conferences, or even just significant mid-level corporate retreats, all that capital flowed right out of the city.
So the new plan, which is championed by Mayor Catherine Fournier, alongside developers group Montoni and Sidley Architecture, targets a very strategic piece of land, right?
It does. It's the final municipal plot at the intersection of St. Charles and Charles Lemoyne Streets. It's primed to completely rewrite the South Shore skyline.
And reading through the wikiresidence.ca breakdown, I was really struck by how the city's ambition just seemed to snowball during the bidding process.
Oh, absolutely. It grew significantly.
Like, initially, the city asked for a convention center that could hold 1,125 people. But the winning bid bumped that up to a modular 1,500-seat main hall with a whole network of breakout rooms.
Right.
So what actually changes at that 1,500-seat threshold? Why push for that specific number instead of just sticking to the original plan?
Well, it completely changes what league the city is playing in. At 1,100 seats, you capture regional sales meetings, maybe local banquets.
Yeah.
But when you hit a modular 1,500-seat capacity, you cross the threshold required by a lot of national and international associations. You suddenly start competing for major trade shows and huge tech summits.
So it opens up a whole new market.
Exactly. And the modular aspect is just as critical. In modern business tourism, those massive cavernous halls are really falling out of favor.
People don't want just one giant empty room anymore.
No, event organizers want a main stage that can seamlessly break down into, say, 5 smaller acoustic-proof rooms for concurrent workshops.
So they aren't just building a bigger room. They're building a flexible machine designed to capture a totally different demographic of business tourism.
Precisely.
And to support that, the plans include a 200-room modern hotel hub. But they didn't stop there. We also have this massive residential component.
Yeah, this is where it gets really huge.
Early blueprints tossed around the idea of maybe 500 units, but the final plan locks in 620 rental units.
Okay.
And they're all sitting on top of 50,000 square feet of commercial and office space.
Which turns a single-use destination into a 24-hour ecosystem.
Okay, but this is where I have to play devil's advocate for a second. We are looking at projected foot traffic of 45,000 to 70,000 business tourists annually for just the convention center alone.
It's a lot of people.
It's a ton. Add in the residents of those 620 units, the office workers, the daily commuters, and they are placing all of this directly on top of the Longueuil Université de Sherbrooke metro station.
Right, the major transit hub.
I know this is a classic case of transit-oriented development, and we've seen that before, but Placing a luxury hotel and a major convention center on a metro line sounds great in theory.
But you're wondering about the practice.
Exactly. In practice, don't high-end executives and international tourists still rely heavily on Ubers, taxis, rental cars to get from the airport to their hotels?
It's a very fair point.
Like, are we overestimating how many of these 70,000 tourists will actually take public transit? And maybe underestimating the massive traffic bottleneck this will cause?
It's a very valid concern because, well, we've all seen poorly executed transit-oriented developments, the ones where a train station is just surrounded by a sea of parking.
Oh, yeah, and the quote-unquote integration is just a narrow sidewalk.
Exactly. But what's fascinating here is Espace Longueuil's approach to the concept of a closed-loop environment. The goal isn't just to put buildings near a train. The goal is to make the car the least convenient option available.
By making everything else totally frictionless.
Precisely. If an executive lands at the airport, they can take a direct light rail or metro connection straight into the Longueuil station.
Okay.
From there, they don't even have to go outside. They navigate a climate-controlled, seamless indoor path straight to the hotel lobby.
Wow, so they never even step onto the street.
Right. Their conference is in the exact same complex. Their dinner options are downstairs in that 50,000 square feet of commercial space. The psychological barrier to using transit just disappears when you never actually have to step out into traffic or wait on a cold curb for a rideshare.
So the residents, the workers, the tourists, they all just become part of the same organic pedestrian flow.
Exactly.
You step out of your apartment, you grab a coffee in the plaza, and you step right onto the metro. The density sustains the retail serves the residents, and the transit moves everyone out of the bottleneck.
And that pedestrian flow is vital. A convention center on its own is often just a dead zone when an event isn't happening.
Oh, completely. Just empty concrete.
But by wrapping it in 620 residential units and street-level retail, you ensure the area feels safe, vibrant, and populated 365 days a year.
Okay, so you've painted a picture of a massive, perfectly integrated ecosystem. But whenever I hear about a project with this many moving parts, public infrastructure, private towers, a convention center, I immediately think about the bill.
Ah, the financials. Always the big question.
Right, because we've all seen the cautionary tales from other cities. A shiny new stadium or a mega complex ends up draining the public coffers for decades because the city promised the moon to some developer. How is Longueuil protecting the taxpayer here?
Well, that is really the most radical part of this entire blueprint. The financial boundaries the municipal administration has drawn are incredibly strict. They break entirely from the traditional model of heavily subsidizing private developers.
Okay, so how does it work?
First, let's look at the land. This is prime city-owned real estate. In many cities, the local government might just sell that land for $1 to incentivize development.
Right, just to get things moving.
But Longueuil is selling the plot to Groupe Montoni at fair market value. The deal is expected to close by February 2027.
Okay, that sets a strong baseline. The city gets paid for the land. But the construction costs for a convention center, a hotel, plus hundreds of apartments, that has to be astronomical.
They are astronomical, and 100% of those construction costs are backed by private capital.
Wait, really?
That-
100%?
Yes. The city is not paying to build the towers or the convention halls. But the real paradigm shift here is their zero operating subsidies rule.
Oh, I read about that in the infodrone.ca breakdown. No public tax dollars will go toward running the convention center or the hotel once they open.
Zero, which is huge because if you look at convention centers across North America, a lot of them actually operate at a loss.
Seriously, they lose money.
Oh, yeah. Cities justify the losses by pointing to the indirect economic benefits. Hotels filling up, local restaurants making money. So the city essentially acts as a permanent financial backstop.
Oh, wow.
But by enforcing a zero operating subsidy rule, Longueuil is forcing the private operators to assume all the operational risk. If the convention center has a slow month in February, the taxpayers do not foot the bill to keep the lights and the heating on.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I love this model. It's like a savvy landlord who rents out a vacant dirt lot to a tenant. The landlord forces the tenant to pay out of their own pocket to build a massive mansion on that lot, handles all the upkeep, and then the landlord just sits back and collects property taxes on the mansion forever.
That's a great analogy.
But wait, If Groupe Montoni is footing the entire bill for the buildings and taking all the operating risk, what is the city actually paying for? A developer doesn't just agree to that without the city putting some skin in the game.
No, of course not. The city is absolutely investing, but their spending is strictly restricted to core municipal responsibilities.
Like what?
They are paying for public works that serve the entire sector anyway. We're talking about upgrading the major water mains, modernizing the electrical grids to handle the new density, and redesigning the connecting streets, sidewalks, and parks around the complex.
So they're basically handling the plumbing and the pavement.
Exactly.
Things that ultimately belong to the public and would need updating eventually, regardless of who bought the land.
Right, they are setting the table. And from an economic standpoint, the city's return on that infrastructure investment is immense.
Due to the taxes.
Exactly. Adding 50,000 square feet of commercial space and hundreds of new residential units means a massive, guaranteed stream of recurring property tax revenue. Plus, you have all the localized job creation, hospitality staff, event managers, catering companies.
It's an incredibly sharp public-private synergy. But relying this heavily on private developers brings us to a very real, very common urban problem.
Gentrification.
Yeah. If you live near a major public transit hub right now, you know what usually happens when a luxury, privately funded mega complex moves in. Property values skyrocket, the surrounding neighborhood gentrifies almost overnight, and the lower-income locals who actually rely on that public transit the most get priced out and pushed to the fringes of the city.
It happens all the time.
Right. So how does this shiny new Espace Longueuil avoid becoming an exclusionary fortress?
Well, if a city allows that to happen, it is fundamentally failing its residents. A transit-oriented development only actually works if the people who need the transit can access it.
And this is where a truly surprising statistic from our sources comes into play. Out of those 620 rental units, the city mandated that 20%, which works out to about 124 apartments, must be strictly dedicated to nonprofit affordable housing, or NPO housing.
It's a huge commitment.
Plus, they are reserving specific physical spaces for local socio-community groups at preferential rates. But here is the mechanism I just don't fully understand. If Groupe Montoni is paying for 100% of the construction, how on earth did the city force them to take a massive financial loss on 124 units? Why wouldn't the developer just walk away?
Because in urban development, density is currency. Cities control the zoning.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, a developer might come to the city and say, hey, we want to build 20 stories. The city can respond, well, we will allow you to build 30 stories, increasing your overall profit margin on the market rate units. But in exchange, you must dedicate a percentage of the total floor plan to nonprofit housing.
So it's a negotiated trade-off.
Exactly. The developer gets the density and the prime transit-adjacent location they absolutely need to make the math work. And the city secures long-term social housing without having to buy the land and build the towers themselves.
That makes perfect sense. But practically speaking, how do you mix those two demographics in the exact same physical space? Usually high-end convention centers and luxury apartments feel completely separate from the surrounding neighborhood.
Yeah, you're talking about the whole poor door versus rich door phenomenon.
Exactly. You get the classic scenario where affordable housing is relegated to a bleak back alley entrance while the luxury renters get a grand lobby. How is Espace Longueuil avoiding that segregation?
For that, we have to look at the architectural philosophy of the project. Jean Pellin, who is the managing partner at Sidley Architecture, specifically addressed this challenge. His stated goal is to completely dismantle what he calls the ivory tower, or the closed vase effect.
The closed vase. It holds something beautiful inside, but nothing else can get in or out.
It's a great visual, right? Too many developments are designed as fortresses with blank concrete walls facing the street and security gates just keeping the neighborhood out.
So what's their alternative?
Pellin describes the Espace Longueuil complex as a beacon. Architecturally, you achieve that by making the ground floor highly permeable. You don't build a wall of glass. You design highly accessible, open public squares.
So you blend the inside and the outside.
Exactly. You blur the lines between the interior lobbies and the exterior streets. The cafes, the seating areas, and the green spaces are designed to explicitly invite people in. It ends up serving the high-paying hotel guests, the nonprofit renters, and the everyday transit commuters simultaneously.
So the physical layout of the ground floor acts as a social equalizer.
Yeah.
Everyone has to navigate the exact same public squares.
Exactly.
And from a broader city planning perspective, Locking in that 20% nonprofit housing from day one is brilliant. It anchors vulnerable populations right at the center of the transit map. They get the exact same logistical advantages, the walkable grocery stores, the fast commute, as the international executives.
It really proves that equitable development doesn't have to be an afterthought, you know? It can be a foundational requirement of the initial bid.
Well, having a brilliant, equitable blueprint on paper is fantastic. But execution is where city projects usually face reality.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the classic joke, right? A 3-year project takes 10 years and a 10-year project takes 30. This brings us to the race to 2030 and the sheer logistics of building this out.
Because the timeline they have committed to is exceptionally aggressive.
Let me lay out the fast-track schedule from the sources because it honestly sounds a bit chaotic. The contractual agreements and the official land sale finalize in February 2027. Groundbreaking and excavation happen later that same year. And then, from 2027 to 2030, they are doing continuous single-phase construction.
Which is highly, highly unusual for a multi-use project of this magnitude.
Really? How does it usually work?
Usually, developers phase it out to manage cash flow. They'll build the commercial plaza first, wait for it to generate some revenue, then build the hotel 2 years later, then start on the residential towers after that.
Right. But here, it all culminates in a simultaneous grand opening by 2030. No decades of sprawling work sites. But logistically, is it actually realistic to build a hotel, a 1,500-seat convention center, commercial spaces, and over 600 apartments all at the exact same time in just 3 years?
It sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, the amount of cement trucks and cranes alone seems impossible to coordinate.
Well, it is an immense logistical headache for the builders, for sure. But if we connect this to the bigger picture of the city's health, single-phase construction is a necessity, not just a preference. Think about where they are building this. The Longueuil Université de Sherbrooke station is the primary transit artery for the entire South Shore region. Hundreds of thousands of commuters rely on it every day.
Ah, so if you drag the construction out over 10 years, phasing it building by building, you are subjecting the entire regional workforce to a decade of detours, noise, and disrupted bus routes.
You'd strangle the very transit hub you're trying to revitalize.
That makes total sense.
Exactly. The city cannot afford a decade of gridlock at its most crucial intersection. Executing in one massive, uninterrupted phase condenses the disruption. It is going to be 3 years of intense logistical pain for the area, but then it's done.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
Right. Mayor Catherine Fournier noted that this rapid timeline is really about killing 3 birds with 1 stone right now.
Okay, so they solve the South Shore's desperate hotel shortage. They finally get a gathering space worthy of the province's 5th largest city, and they inject a massive block of badly needed housing, both market rate and nonprofit, into a starved market.
And we really have to view Espace Longueuil as the catalyst for a much grander vision. It isn't just a single complex, it's the spark.
What else is happening around it?
Well, right next door to this site, you have the upcoming Sir Charles project, which is slated to be the tallest residential tower on the entire South Shore. And just beyond that, the city has plans for an entirely new, revitalized waterfront neighborhood along the river.
So Espace Longueuil is essentially the anchor. It drops down and creates the gravitational pull that allows all these other developments to connect back to the transit hub.
It's not just a building project, it's the genesis of a new downtown.
It is arguably the most profound urban metamorphosis in Longueuil's modern history.
Oh, without a doubt.
It really is incredible when you step back and look at the whole mechanism we've just unpacked. We started with a city that literally had no central venue for its own people. And we've seen how Longueuil is leveraging that glaring weakness to force a completely new development model.
Yeah, they really flipped the script.
They're using 100% private money for construction, committing to 0 operating subsidies so taxpayers aren't left holding the bag, mandating 20% nonprofit housing to protect vulnerable renters, and squeezing it all into a rapid, single-phase 2030 delivery to protect their transit corridors.
It completely dismantles the old playbook of how cities negotiate with private developers.
And as we wrap up, I want you to think about the transit hubs in your own city. When you walk around them, do they feel like disconnected, concrete park and rides? Or are they dense, walkable, complete living environments where anyone, regardless of income, can live and move efficiently?
That's a great question to ask.
Look at what your local government is demanding from developers and see how it compares to this Longueuil blueprint.
And I'd leave you with this final thought to ponder. We just discussed how Longueuil successfully mandated that 20% of a massive luxury privately funded mega complex be strictly dedicated to nonprofit housing, all built within a rapid 3-year window.
Which is practically unheard of.
Exactly. So if this project hits its 2030 targets, does it definitively prove that the traditional developer excuse of, affordable housing is just too expensive to include, is that no longer valid? And if so, what is stopping every other major city from adopting this exact same blueprint tomorrow?
That is a question every single city planner and local politician should have to answer. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into urban transformation. The next time you find yourself in a city that feels disjointed, remember it doesn't have to stay that way. Sometimes all it takes is the right blueprint and a city willing to enforce it to finally build a magnetic center. Until next time.